Okay, everyone. Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd. I hope you're doing well. Apple Music, my personally preferred music streaming service, has just come out with a top 100 albums of all time list. Microdosing it over the course of like a week or so. The entire list is out now. So let's go over the 100 and see if this list hits. Okay, no muss, no fuss. We're going in, no foreplay. Here's the 100. Let's get into it. Assembled with the help of artists and experts, it's a modern love letter to the records that have shaped the world we live and listen in today.
Nobody asked me.
All right, let's get going. Here we go. 100. It's Robin with Body Talk. Not a personal favorite of mine, but when it comes to 2010s dance pop, it's a classic. It's a record that's withstood the test of time. I don't see why it should be knocked off of a list like this, but it's not high priority for me. Hotel California, it's fine, but there's so many more better bands and records from this era of music, specifically groups that like operated in a lane similar to the Eagles. This really did not need to be on the list, as is also the case for Astroworld, because frickin' Rodeo is better. Better songs, better production, was more groundbreaking for the time, has aged better as well. Astroworld was absolutely positively not the better record. It's just when dudes named Tanner started listening to Travis Scott, and that's all. Ooh, Rage's first album, honestly, should be higher, but excellent record nonetheless, even if I do prefer Evil Empire myself. Lord, Pure Heroin, what are you doing? There are a few good bops on this record, but it's not a very versatile album. It's very one-dimensional. It's very much painting itself into a corner pretty quickly. Lord's follow-up is the one with the better production, the more anthemic songs. That is the record that I think is really going to withstand the test of time. What are we doing here with Pure Heroin? Let's move on. Usher, Confessions, there are better R&B records from this era. While I respect Usher's talent, I don't think he's one of the best, at least when it comes to storytelling and songwriting. As a singer, he certainly got it, and a bit of a spoiler and a shocker here, there's no Weeknd on this list. So how are we making room for this Usher album and literally no Weeknd albums? Bro literally revolutionized R&B for the 2010s and no mention whatsoever? Okay, Burial, Untrue, one of the greatest electronic music albums and dubstep albums of all time. Should be higher though, but still, incredible record. One thing I find kind of odd though is while I do agree with this record being included into the list, I find a lot of these classic record lists, these very kind of critic lists, tend to just outright ignore and just want to have nothing to do with IDM, which is also sadly the case for this list over here. I don't know what it is about just like kind of being deaf toward this revolutionary, highly influential like wave of 90s and 80s electronic music producers that undoubtedly left a huge impact on Burial, but they're just not here. Solange, Seat at the Table. I have no issue with Solange being included in this list as far as alternative R&B goes, indie type singer-songwriter music that involves a fusion of different genres. She is one of the more solid and respectable artists out there. However, Flower Boy, Tyler at 92, kind of low, and it should have been Igor. I get that Flower Boy is like the more streamable, more easy listening album, but Igor is more creative, more daring, more risk-taking, more interesting. Really Tyler at a peak of conceptuality and really just uniqueness as an artist. I feel like we're kind of lowballing the number and picking the wrong album because it is kind of a consistent thing in this list that we are kind of mostly doing one record per artist. A few artists get away with two, but for the most part, it's one per. No idea why they picked this George Michael album. I don't think it's his best solo LP. If you were going with this album, I wouldn't have even put it on this list. AC/DC Back in Black, it's fine. But as far as like hard rock goes, I feel like there are better bands and there are better artists. AC/DC certainly has a distinct sound, but some of the best records in hard rock, I don't know. Lady Gaga, Fame Monster, maybe could be a little bit higher considering how incredible it is. I mean, it's one of the best pop albums of the 2000s, if not the best as far as mainstream stuff goes. But yeah, this is a pretty epic as heck album for sure. Not my Nina pick, but Nina absolutely, generally, regardless of which album you're picking, should be much higher. She's like a top 50 artist at least. That's like conservative. That's lowballing it for Nina. How she's at 88, I don't know. Nice to see a trip hop nod with Massive Attack. That's nice. I feel like this placement number-wise is fine. Mary J. Blige, good inclusion. Liking that a lot too. Casey Musgraves. I still do not mess with this record all that much. I find it bland. I find it boring. As far as country music, I just don't really think it has a lot of flavor, a lot of taste. I find the twang and more rustic instrumentation on her previous records to be a lot more interesting. And as far as singer-songwriter music goes, I feel like there are much better picks that you could be making here generally, especially with like, you know, this newer wave of singer-songwriters that have come out of the indie woodwork over the last couple of decades. Like, for example, another spoiler on this list, no Sufjan Stevens, not even a Joanna Newsom nod. Like, what the hell are we doing? Doggy Style, Snoop Dogg, not mad at this placement. Inclusion in this list makes sense. Patti Smith, Horses, probably could be higher. Amazing record. Classic record, one of the best proto-punk albums and art rock albums of all time. 83 is kind of lowballing it. However, I am kind of confused about the inclusion of Get Rich or Die Tryin'. I get it, 50 had a run, he had his moment, but in my eyes, to my ears, this is his only decent album, and this record itself, as an album experience, is not that great of a listen. It gets really daunting and kind of like just a chore to listen to toward the end. It's not that versatile of a record, and when it comes to production choices and overall rap ability and lyricism, 50 Cent is nowhere near one of the best of his generation. I mean, we could have instead had an early Cameron project here, a Diplomats album, a frickin' Supreme Clientele, but nope. None of that here, unfortunately. Neil Young, After the Gold Rush, good pick of an album, though I am sure there are some people that are kind of sore about him landing in the 80s. Not me, though. Marshall Mathers LP, 80, that's fine. It's an okay placement, I suppose, and that is the record to choose, certainly. NFR, I feel like her latest LP is quite a bit better than NFR in terms of its versatility and its lyricism and storytelling, but NFR is still an incredible record. Great production, great songs all around, and really the first moment in Lana's career where I feel like everybody could universally love and celebrate her music because it just truly had everything going on for it. Great pick. Maybe a little low for some fans, but Elton John, Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. That's the pick. That's the album. 78 isn't too bad either, I suppose. Madonna, Like a Prayer, is an interesting choice because I feel like with Madonna, there are numerous albums and eras that you could go with. You could go with her debut. You could go with the sensual erotica. You could go with her revival moment with Ray of Light. That's often kind of the critic favorite, but still, Like a Prayer is not really a bad pick. Kind of shocked that this very bloated album from Bad Bunny is landing this high on the list. I'm not mad at its inclusion because I feel like Bad Bunny has really kind of like made an undeniable lane for himself in the music industry today. But like, there's so many amazing, consistent classic records that have landed prior to this. This placement to me just is kind of shocking. Right up against Missy Elliott's Super Duper Fly. This should be here, absolutely. I'm not mad at the 70s placement, though. We could go a little bit higher with the Downward Spiral, though. Like, this is an incredible industrial rock album, really kind of like the industrial rock album of note. Not to mention the record is so good, its creativity is so transcendent across genres that there are producers in numerous lanes of music that have taken a lot of notes from Trent Reznor's stuff, be that in rock, in pop, in hip-hop, in soundtrack music, obviously, with a lot of the stuff he's made for various films over the years, too. This album, while its lyricism here and there may be cringe, it needs to be higher. Steely Dan. Steely Dan. You know, there's a lot of incredible jazz players and jazz classics and jazz rock albums, Mahavishnu Orchestra, Frank Zappa, so on and so forth. Nowhere near this list, not even touching this list, not even a hot Rats, what? But instead, we're getting one of the blandest mashes of jazz and pop and rock over here. I just don't really get the appeal of this album all that much. There are numerous artists that are much more interesting in the rock lane, in the jazz lane, in the fusion lane, in my opinion. This shouldn't even be here. Moving on from there, SZA, SOS. I mean, in my opinion, I love the record. I think it's a very good record. It's an incredible and versatile, sparkling and emotional blend of pop and R&B and singer-songwriter music. I mean, it is a little bloated and it's not the most consistent album out there, and I think 72 is pretty high for the record, but I'm not mad at it landing in here. I'm kind of surprised they didn't go with Control, though. That sort of seems to continue being the fan favorite, but that's neither here nor there. Kraftwerk, Trans-Europe Express. Incredible record. One of the greatest groups electronic music has ever known. Surprised that it's not a little bit higher, honestly. But considering there are a lot of classic lists such as this that just totally turn their ears off when it comes to any electronic music whatsoever, I can't really be too mad at it. NWA, Straight Outta Compton. Kind of thought this one would be a bit higher considering its influence, its cultural impact over the years, but still I'm glad it's here. Metallica, Master of Puppets. This really could have been quite a bit higher. It's one of the greatest metal albums of all time. Definitely Metallica's best, in my opinion. So influential and so huge that there are a lot of artists that take numerous notes from it outside of the metal space. I'll just kind of use this as an opportunity to say there's not a whole lot of metal on this list to begin with. We really could have used some Priest and some Maiden at the very least. Moving on from there, The Strokes, Is This It? One of the greatest indie rock records of the 2000s, but again, there's not a whole lot of room for indie music generally on this list. It just sort of seems like they wanted to play to some of the more mainstream aspects of it. But, again, I find that kind of curious with Apple Music because they typically like to market themselves as being a little bit more, hip and a little bit more in touch with what's going on culturally. Apple Music isn't just for the mainstream. We're sort of like, a little bit below that surface. However, we're not going to dig much deeper than The Strokes. That's pretty unfortunate. Portishead Dummy, honestly, should have been higher. Great production, killer vocals from Beth Gibbons, who also has a new LP out recently, which is incredible in my opinion. I think also they could have brought the Smiths a little bit higher, like, maybe like a top 50 type record. This is the jangle pop indie rock album of note, but there are no damn skips on this record, and it's just so incredible performance-wise, writing-wise. There are very few albums that are more solid than The Queen is Dead, so I feel like just on a writing and an album craft standpoint, this needs to be quite a bit higher. Also could have been a lot higher on the De La Soul too. This is one of the most creative, fun, and groundbreaking hip-hop albums of all time. De La Soul not only brought great production and good lyrical skill, but boatloads of personality which remain unmatched for generations, honestly, which is part of why this album has withstood the test of time to the degree that it has. Baduizm, I would have gone with Mama's Gun, but I'm glad Erica is in the mix. There probably could have been a bit more neo-soul, some Jill Scott, somebody like that in the list as well while we're talking about inclusions. Electric Ladyland is a much more interesting record to me, but this is kind of like, the hard rock, psych rock gold standard Are You Experienced? So I'm not, too surprised about Apple Music going with this one. All Eyes on Me. Obviously, Tupac is a hugely influential and incredible figure, great rapper, one of the best and one of the most impactful of his generation. But I feel like there's a lot of production aesthetics and songs on this record that haven't aged super well over the years. I don't know if I would put it above some of the albums we've seen so far, but around the 60s seems right to me. Sade, Love Deluxe. Love that Sade continues to see love and see respect on lists like this. Not mad at this placement at all. Kind of shocked at this being as low as it is, though. This is like literally the art rock, the proto-punk album of all time. There are numerous records that are placed higher than this Velvet Underground album over here that would not be here if not for this album, and yet 60. And not only 60, but right underneath Arctic Monkeys AM. You've got to be fucking kidding me. In no context, in no timeline, in no dimension, is AM a better record than Velvet Underground and Nico. This isn't even the best Arctic Monkeys album. Totally gutless and boring rock album, and no way Oasis's What's the Story, Morning Glory is also, again, better and more interesting than Velvet Underground and Nico. Following this, we have D'Angelo's Voodoo, which is an incredible, groovy, and entrancing R&B album. Though I would say his latest record is sounding better and better every year. The Cure, Disintegration. Not really too mad at a mid-50s placement, though I do think Anti is kind of overrated on this list. I do like the artsy kind of vibes and atmosphere that Rihanna provides on this album, but does this record bring her best songwriting and vocal performances? In my opinion, not necessarily. A Love Supreme, classic, one of the best jazz albums of all time. Obviously, it was going to be included on this list. As far as Rolling Stones picks go, I feel like we could have gone with Sticky Fingers. We could have gone with Let It Bleed and placed it a bit higher. I feel like the songwriting on those records is a lot more succinct and punchy. Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction above the Stones. I mean, this is their best record. I'm not really denying that, but 52, and again, above Velvet Underground. Get out of here. I mean, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, considering again some of the groups that did not make the cut, you could even say that I don't know if this record should even be in the mix. There's no Van Halen here. We do have Prince though. Sign of the Times, one of the most predictive pop records of all time. Very happy also that this is not the only Prince inclusion we are going to see. Kate Bush is at the very least a top 50 artist of all time, so just barely squeaking it in there with Hounds of Love, which I'm not mad about. Would not place the Joshua Tree this high, especially with just how one-dimensional the guitar playing is on a lot of the record. But a lot of great anthems on this album, and definitely U2's creative and songwriting peak. Abso-freaking-lutely Paul's Boutique, some of the best sample-based production on any hip-hop album ever. Great interplay between Ad Rock and Mike D and MCA. Beastie Boys honestly do not get enough credit in the current hip-hop landscape, and I'm glad to see it happening here with this list. However, Drake's Take Care, come on, give me a break. Right up against Beastie Boys and in the top 50. It's his best album as far as how it's aged over the years, but like, if it's going to be anywhere, like, it shouldn't be breaking 60. This is a joke. Get it out of here. Exodus, Bob Marley, top 50 artist handily, so not mad about that. Björk, Homogenic. Spoiler, this is the only Björk inclusion on the list. Personally would have gone with Vespertine, but even if we are just sticking with Homogenic, this should be higher. This is like top 30 conservatively. It's that groundbreaking and influential vocally, production-wise in terms of its blends of art, pop, and dance music. Moving on from there, Stevie Wonder, Inner Visions. Was kind of shocked to see Stevie at 44, but Songs in the Key of Life ranks a lot higher, which I am glad about. Remain in Light really should be higher. That is a top 25 album at the very least. Janet Jackson, Control. I kind of feel like there are multiple Janet records that you could have gone with. I feel like the pick should have been Velvet Rope, and we could have also gone again into the top 25. With Outkast, I would have gone with Stankonia, though I am not mad at it landing in the 40s or around 40. Aretha Franklin, for as influential as she is, really should be higher, especially considering some of the singers and songwriters that land right after this. We have Nas, Illmatic, which is fine at 39. Carole King, there are so many songwriters from this era that I feel like could have gone in this place instead. Like, for example, there's no PJ Harvey on this list. There is also no Fiona Apple on this list. There's no Paul Simon, no Simon and Garfunkel on this list. To me, Carole King isn't like ranking on the level of those artists in terms of discography, creativity, influence, and impact. I mean, Tapestry is a very good album, and it's obviously Carol's best and most celebrated. It's the pick, but 38, and again, at the sacrifice of so many other names who I think should be on this list. I don't know. Moving on from there, though, 36 Chambers, excellent record, incredible album. Surprised it didn't land at 36, like, you know, for the meme. 37 seems kind of like they were being funny with it. We have Beyonce self-titled. This is not the only Beyonce inclusion in the list, but I'm kind of surprised they went with the self-titled over Renaissance. Renaissance is such an incredibly tight, consistent, fluid ode to numerous modes of dance music, and I just feel like that album is going to age a lot better over the years, frankly. We have London Calling, The Clash, one of the most perfect rock records ever recorded. Could be higher, but honestly, mid-30s is not bad. Public Enemy as well. It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back. This is one of my favorite hip-hop albums of all time. The Bomb Squad production on this thing is mind-blowing and incredible. Chuck D has such a mastery of message and lyricism. On top of it, he has a voice, he has a tone, he has a timbre where he can basically say anything and it'll sound cool. But instead, what he chose is to say some of the most righteous shit that's ever been recorded on any hip-hop album ever. For me personally, could be higher, but I'm not mad at mid-30s. Radiohead, Kid A. OK Computer lands higher on the list. I feel like if we're going to give Radiohead 2 inclusions, there are lots of other artists that could have been given 2 inclusions, like Björk. And again, what I find funny about this is like what a lot of people pull pud over with this record is like, oh yeah, it's like so experimental and electronic. When like, again, all of those left field, groundbreaking, incredible, amazing UK IDM producers and pioneers that influenced this album, not on this list, not on the list. We don't have an Aphex Twin. We don't have a Square Pusher. We don't have an Autechre. What are we doing? It's like we're turning the blindest eye to this very essential era of music. IDM is not the only one, but still, like a single album would be nice. We have Ready to Die. They're really kind of hitting all the major hip hop nods, which is fine and is great. I'm not really upset with any of the albums they've included so far. They're all great albums, but we're not making a whole lot of room for jazz and metal and electronic music. Never mind stuff that is from outside the West, but that's kind of another conversation. Jagged Little Pill is way overrated on this list, and on top of it, I question whether or not it should even be included because while it does have amazing hits, Atlantis is an era-defining artist. The deeper cuts on this album do not jive well. As an overall album experience, it is not that great. Not nearly as great in terms of flow and consistency as some of the records to follow. Like Billie Eilish's debut over here. Kind of bold to place it at 30. Kind of a shocker. However, I love this album, and I think Billie is one of the most creative and odd and interesting pop artists of the modern era. I think this record is particularly dark and quirky and intriguing. We have Low End Theory, amazing album, maybe the best jazz rap album of all time. Incredible beats and flows from Q-Tip and the gang. Loving this one to death, absolutely. Personally, would pick Animals and Wish You Were Here over Dark Side of the Moon, but some Floyd's got to land somewhere. And I think there's some other prog picks that we could have gone with, not over this, but in addition to this, because again, no rush here. And also, is there even In the Court of the Crimson King? I don't think so. Which honestly, if you're trying to talk about the 100 greatest albums of all time, it's kind of fucked. Led Zeppelin 2, which is by no means, I think, better than Dark Side of the Moon, but also over Physical Graffiti? 26, Dark Twisted Fantasy. Not only overrated on the list, but it should have been College Dropout, and we should have left it there. Miles Davis, I feel like if any jazz artist is worthy of 2 picks on this list, and he does not get 2, it is Miles. However, we're only getting Kind of Blue. We could have also gone Bitches Brew, but this is the classic. This is the pick. Cool jazz and all that, and amazing album all around, undoubtedly. Bowie is absolutely a top 25 artist. Ziggy Stardust may be an obvious pick, but it is still an incredible record, not denying that. Daft Punk, I feel like this is a top 25 album too. This is a very solid pick and placement. Love Discovery, one of the greatest electronic dance music albums of all time for sure. Bruce Springsteen, Born to Run, maybe slightly overrated. I feel like this could be more in the 30s, but it's still a good record. Not the only Beatles placement we get, but Revolver at 21, I think, is kind of bold. Yeah, it's better than Sgt. Pepper's, which I think is a little overrated, but I tend to find the White Album a wee bit more interesting. Pet Sounds, better than Revolver, according to Apple Music. You can fight it out in the comments over that. However, I don't entirely disagree, honestly. Dr. Dre gets a second little placement in the list over here, not only through NWA, but The Chronic as well. I don't know if I would rank it all the way at number 19, but it's still a great album, especially not higher than Low End Theory. Moving on from there, 1989, the Taylor's version, which is the objectively worse version. The mixes are worse. It does not hit the same. And the extra tracks, I don't really feel like add that much to the discourse. But even if we were going with the original, 18 out of all these albums? I don't think so. As a songwriter, I wouldn't even put Taylor Swift on the level of an Alanis Morissette or a Carole King, who I'm also sort of like skeptical about their inclusions here, despite, again, not even a Fiona friggin' Apple album on this goddamn list. How do you miss Fiona friggin' Apple? Marvin Gaye, what's going on? One of the greatest soul albums of all time. It should be here. It's even potentially a top 10 album, but 17 is fine. Joni Mitchell, Blue, also potentially a top 10 album on a list such as this, but 16 is fine. Adele, 21, would not place it this high, but she is one of the greatest vocalists of the modern era, one of the most streamed, one of the most popular. I get the appeal. I understand why it would be here. I kind of expected it. I'm not mad about it. Bob Dylan, excellent placement for really the folk rock album of note, Highway 61. There are honestly numerous Bob albums that could have gone in this spot, and Bob is kind of an artist who I feel like, could potentially deserve a couple placements, be it through this, be it through Times They Are Changin', be it through Blonde on Blonde, but Highway is not a bad choice. Getting bold with the Blueprint placement. I love the album. I think it's great. There are a lot of hip hop records from the 2000s, like, again, College Dropout, and especially the 90s, that I would place pretty far above this one. I feel like, I don't know, like things are a little out of whack with this album being placed over so many rap classics, I would say. Radiohead, another placement with OK Computer, which is fine. I feel like we could have even gone with like one Radiohead album. I feel like the fans and the band wouldn't be mad if they just kind of landed at number 12 here and we, made some room for some Richard D. James, but whatever. Fleetwood Mac getting just barely cut out of the top 10 with Rumors. I just kind of find the love of their stuff, the way that it's kind of swelled so intensely recently, very interesting. But it is well-deserved because, every tune on this thing is absolutely incredible, that's for sure. We're entering into the top 10. We got Lemonade, which, not mad at. It's a great record. It's an incredible record. Is 10 kind of high for my taste? Yeah. I feel like there are better pop, singer-songwriter, concept type albums, but it is one of the best of the modern era of the mainstream, point blank period. Never mind. Game-changing rock album. There's absolutely no denying that. We probably have to censor the cover for YouTube, but this album started the grunge revolution. Kurt Cobain was also an incredible singer, songwriter, and guitar player in his own right. Can't also forget Mr. Dave Grohl killing it on The Skins. Great production on the record too, though there are some fans who would debate that. They're idiots. Amy Winehouse, Back to Black, kind of high, honestly. I would have placed it maybe in the 40s, in the 50s. I love it. It's great. I feel like Amy is a timeless artist who was taken from us too soon. But there are numerous albums that I don't think I would place this over that have landed previously on the list. And I'm not even talking about just simply Nirvana. No Fiona Apple on this goddamn list. We have Good Kid, Mad City. That is the Kendrick pick. We are not going T-Pab, apparently. No T-Pab on this list, which is absolutely friggin' nuts. This could have landed in the top 25, and then T-Pab could have instead been a top 10. But instead, we're doing this, which I guess if you want to, it's fine. Songs in the Key of Life. I'm not mad at it. It's for sure arguably a top 10 album. It is a fantastically written and performed double LP epic, fueled with passion and absolutely amazing performances, vocally and instrumentally. Blonde, top 5 album of all time. I love it, but there are elements to Frank's music that I feel like can be kind of dodgy. Plus the opening track on this thing, I could really take it or leave it. It's a very sour tone setter for me. And I just feel like Frank is not on the level vocally that a lot of artists are sort of like, in his lane creatively. I get it's a huge record. I get it's an influential record, but, top 5 I think is a little bold. Prince and the Revolution, also very much a top 10 album. Love Purple Rain to death. This album is absolutely incredible. Abbey Road, also very much a top 10 album. Not mad at it. However, Thriller, no. Absolutely not. Number 2 album of all time, considering like as an album flow goes, Off the Wall is so much better. I mean, the hits on this album are incredible, but I feel like this album is just like, as far as like overall assembly, it's like a compilation of hits and nothing else. The deep cuts are still to this day not that great, especially that Paul McCartney track. There are better Michael Jackson albums. There are even better Janet Jackson albums. This also kind of makes me reflect on all of the new wave and synth pop that didn't really make the cut on this list as well. No Depeche Mode, no New Order. Like Blue Monday is one of the biggest, greatest, most widely selling singles of all time, but no New Order nod on this list. It's kind of preposterous. And number 1, Miseducation of Lauryn Hill. I mean, honestly, not mad at this, number 1. It's an amazing, versatile album that covers so many bases, so many banger songs on it, so many passionate, personal, meaningful, substantive lyrics. Lauryn not only had a knack for rapping and singing, but on top of it, a great ear for production and different musical styles, to the point where she mashed them together very effectively on numerous tracks across this album. I mean, it's a record that really kind of has everything and has only aged better and better and better as the years have drawn on. There are a lot of disappointing placements and back-to-backs and exclusions across this list, but this placement and this pick is not a bad one. This is not one that I'm upset with at all. All right, well, there you go. There you have it. My thoughts on this list. Apple's Top 100, you know, it could have been worse, but I feel like there are some artists they could have cleared out and some repeat picks of artists they could have cleared out in order to make room for just like a smidge more jazz, a smidge more metal, and actually like, you know, some real hardcore electronic stuff. And to me, the Fiona Apple exclusion is just ridiculous. Not to mention, again, the blind eye that's totally turned toward the indie wing of the music industry, even with artists whose output is as undeniable as Sufjan. But there you have it. That's the list. Let me know your thoughts on it. And you guys are the best. I'll see you in the next video. Anthony Fantano, Apple Music, Top 100 forever.